The Rise of Eminem, Segment 1. The Boy from Detroit, A Childhood in Chaos. Before the sold-out arenas, before the Grammys, the platinum plaques, the controversies and comebacks, before the world called him Eminem, he was just Marshall Bruce Mathers III, a pale, skinny kid growing up on the wrong side of 8 Mile Road. He didn't start with much, not fame, not money, not even stability. But what he had was anger and words, and that eventually would be enough. But not before life nearly broke him first. Detroit, Michigan, early 1980s, the city was already falling apart. Factories shutting down, families leaving, crack crime and chaos creeping in. But for Marshall, the chaos didn't start outside, it started at home. Born on October 17, 1972, in St. Joseph, Missouri, he never really knew his father. Marshall Sr. left when he was still a baby, gone without explanation. No visits, no letters, no love. His mother, Debbie Mathers, raised him alone, or tried to. They bounced from place to place, Missouri to Michigan, then back again. Never more than a few months in one spot, sometimes in trailer parks, sometimes in broken-down houses, sometimes nowhere at all. Marshall changed schools over 20 times before high school. Each move, another goodbye, another fight, another start over, no roots, no friends, no peace, just survival. Marshall wasn't built like the other kids. He was small, quiet, white. In neighborhoods where that made him a target, he got beat up a lot. One day he was attacked in the school bathroom, slammed so hard against a urinal he blacked out. He was only 9 years old. His mother sued the school district. The case was dismissed. And Marshall? He just went back to class. He learned young. The system wouldn't save him. No one was coming. If he wanted a way out, he'd have to make it himself. But in the middle of all that darkness, he found one light, rap music. It hit him like lightning. Run DMC, LL Cool J, Beastie Boys, NWA. He didn't just listen, he studied it, memorized rhyme schemes, copied flows, wrote verses on scraps of paper. He didn't care that he was white, didn't care he had no money, didn't care people laughed when he said he wanted to rap. Because this felt like his voice, his therapy, his escape. He started writing constantly, rhyming words that shouldn't rhyme, bending syllables, inventing characters. By 14, he was already battling older kids at school, losing sometimes, winning sometimes, but always learning. They called him Eminem for Marshall Mathers. Later, he'd stylize it as Eminem. At first, it was just a tag. Later, it would become a weapon. But back then, it was a shield, a way to feel seen. Warren, Michigan, Marshall, and his mother finally settled in a small, broken-down home. Low income, barely heated in the winter, no father, no structure. Debbie struggled with her own health, physical and mental. Their relationship was complicated. Some say she tried, others say she hurt more than she helped. Marshall would later accuse her of emotional abuse. She would sue him for defamation. But the truth, it's messy and painful and real. Because sometimes love isn't soft. It's twisted, chaotic, codependent. But it was the only love he knew. High school didn't last. Marshall failed 9th grade 3 times, not because he wasn't smart, but because he couldn't stay focused. He was skipping class, writing rhymes, working odd jobs, living like a grown man at 16. Eventually he dropped out, and with no diploma, no backup plan, no money, all he had was rap and a baby on the way. 1995, the birth of Haley. At just 23, Marshall became a father, and it changed everything. He wasn't just rapping for fun anymore, he was rapping for survival, to feed his daughter, to keep the lights on, to escape the cycle that swallowed everyone he knew. He worked long hours washing dishes, cooking at a grill, then stayed up all night recording songs on a 4-track in his bedroom. No studio, no label, just hunger. He started releasing music under the name Eminem, raw, unpolished, honest. His first album, Infinite 1996, flopped commercially. Barely any press, no real distribution. Most people ignored it. Those who did listen said he sounded like Nas, like AZ, like someone else. No one knew who he was yet, and that crushed him. That year, Marshall hit rock bottom, broke, depressed, living in a house full of people, fighting with Kim, Haley's mother, getting evicted. He even attempted suicide with a bottle of pills. But he woke up, alone, ashamed, but breathing. And he picked up a pen, because if the world wasn't going to give him a chance, he was going to take it. That's when everything changed. He created a new alter ego, darker, meaner, funnier, more dangerous, a cartoon villain with bleach blonde hair and zero filter. He called him Slim Shady. Slim didn't care about being politically correct. He didn't care about fitting in. He was violent, funny, twisted, and brilliant. Slim said the things Marshall couldn't. He became the outlet for rage, for trauma, for every feeling that had no place in polite society, and people started noticing. Marshall entered the Rap Olympics in 1997, an underground freestyle battle tournament in Los Angeles. He came in second, but someone in the crowd had a demo tape, and that tape made its way to Dr. Dre. Yes, that Dr. Dre, West Coast legend, founder of Death Row Records, the man who helped build Snoop Dogg, Tupac, NWA, and now he was listening to this white kid from Detroit with impossible rhyme schemes and a razor for a tongue. Most people thought it was a joke. Dre didn't. He heard fire. And within weeks, Marshall was on a plane to LA. He'd spent his whole life in shadow of poverty, violence, addiction, obscurity, but now he was about to walk into the biggest studio in the world. He still didn't have a hit, still didn't have money, still wasn't safe. But for the first time ever, he had a chance. Segment 2. Infinite struggles, demos, rejection, and early failure. Before the fame, before the feuds, before the name Eminem echoed through every hallway in music, there was Infinite, an album few heard, a voice nearly lost, and a dream on the edge of being buried alive. This was the beginning of the climb. But it didn't feel like one. It felt like failure, like hunger, like doors slamming shut before they ever opened. Because even when Marshall Bruce Mathers III found his voice, the world wasn't ready to listen. Not yet. Detroit, 1995. By now, Marshall was a 23-year-old high school dropout with a daughter, no degree, no label, and no real connections. He was working long hours at a restaurant called Gilbert's Lodge, washing dishes for minimum wage. Then rushing home to record. He would come back with grease on his hands and rhymes in his head. No studio, no engineers, no manager, just beats, a 4-track recorder, and a growing fire in his chest. Because no matter how exhausted he was, no matter how broken, or overlooked, he believed that there was something inside him worth hearing. That same year, with the help of local producers like Denon Porter, Con Artis, and Proof, his closest friend and fellow rapper, Marshall put together his first full-length album. It was called Infinite. It was lyrical, thoughtful. Classic 90s hip-hop. He was channeling Nas, AZ, Redman, the lyricists he admired. But when the tape dropped, nothing. The press didn't care, the radio didn't spin it, the streets didn't respect it. Some listeners even said, "You sound like you're trying to be someone else." That hurt because he was trying to be someone else, someone safe, someone respectable, someone the game would accept. But in hiding his pain, he lost his edge. Still, he pushed, he sold CDs from his trunk, handed tapes out at open mics, battled at the Shelter, Detroit's underground war zone for battle rappers. He was climbing a ladder, but it was missing half its rungs. White, broke, no cosign, no mainstream, and rap in the mid-90s wasn't built for someone like him, not yet. 1996, 1997, the breaking point. Marshall was spiraling, Infinite had flopped. His confidence was bleeding out. He was living in a house with multiple family members, no privacy, no space, no stability. He and Kim were constantly fighting, the bills were stacking up. And baby Haley needed food, clothes, a future. He was failing, and he knew it. In a moment of despair, Marshall tried to take his own life. He swallowed a bottle of Tylenol mixed with alcohol, but he survived. Woke up the next day, physically fine, mentally fractured, and he made a decision. If the nice guy version of Eminem wasn't working, then maybe it was time to let the other side speak. Enter Slim Shady, the alter ego, the villain, the maniac. Born from rage, trauma, frustration, and dark humor, Slim Shady didn't care about acceptance, didn't care about respectability. He was violent, twisted, funny in a way that made you uncomfortable. And for the first time, Marshall felt free. He began writing what would become the Slim Shady EP. Not an album, not a demo, but a statement. Every song was darker, louder, raw. He rapped about poverty, crime, drugs, his hatred for authority, his dysfunctional family, and his rage at the world. But through the chaos, there was brilliance. His rhyme schemes were unmatched. His wordplay was acrobatic. His flows were unpredictable. People in Detroit's underground started to notice. This wasn't trying to be Nas anymore. This was new, dangerous, magnetic. Slim Shady was born, and the streets couldn't ignore him. 1997, the Rap Olympics. In an effort to break out, Marshall scraped together money to fly to Los Angeles. He entered the Rap Olympics, an underground battle tournament featuring MCs from across the country. No crowd of fans, no hype man, just raw skill. He placed second, he didn't win money, didn't get a deal, but someone in the room took notice. A staffer at Interscope Records named Dean Gistlinger asked for a demo. Marshall handed over the Slim Shady EP. A few weeks later, that demo landed on the desk of Dr. Dre, and that changed everything. At the time, Dr. Dre was working with Aftermath Entertainment, a new label, a new vision. He was looking for the next big thing. When he heard the tape, he didn't believe Eminem was white. Then he saw the photo, and instead of backing away, he said, "Find him, now." A few days later, Dre was in the studio with Marshall. First track they did, "My Name Is," a career-defining anthem, wacky, wild, offensive, unforgettable. Dre knew instantly. This kid was a star, but not everyone agreed. People at Interscope tried to block the signing. He's white. He's too controversial. He's unpredictable. Dre stood firm. I don't care if he's purple. If he can rhyme, he's got a place here. And in that moment, Eminem wasn't just signed, he was unleashed. But with opportunity came pressure. Eminem was now facing the biggest challenge of his life. Don't blow it. He had one shot, one album, one chance to turn pain into purpose, and he was ready because he knew what it was like to lose everything. And this time, he wasn't going back. As the Slim Shady LP began production, Eminem tapped into everything he had. Every insult, every eviction, every beatdown, every failure, he poured it into his pen. And what came out wasn't safe, wasn't pretty, wasn't radio friendly, but it was real, and it was about to change the face of rap forever. Segment 3, Slim Shady is born, persona, anger, and breakthrough. Every artist has a moment. The moment when the world stops laughing, the moment when the pain is no longer just personal, it's it's weaponized. The moment when everything clicks and something explosive is born. For Marshall Mathers, that moment had a name, Slim Shady. He wasn't just an alter ego, he wasn't a gimmick. Slim Shady was rage with a rhythm, a coping mechanism turned into a cultural weapon, a sarcastic, psychotic, brilliant voice forged out of rejection, humiliation, and trauma. And in 1997, Slim Shady was ready to speak, loudly. The Slim Shady EP was raw, violent, offensive, and unforgettable. Lines about murder, drugs, poverty, his ex, his mother, society. Nothing was off limits. And unlike Infinite, it wasn't trying to impress anyone. It was there to shock, stab, and stand out. Underground listeners began to whisper, "Yo, you heard that white boy from Detroit?" He was rapping like no one else, syllable stacking, changing flows mid-verse, punching with every line. It wasn't clean, it wasn't safe, it was authentic in the darkest way possible. And that's what caught Dr. Dre's attention. When Dre listened to the Slim Shady EP, it wasn't just the rhyme schemes, it was the fearlessness. Dre wasn't looking for another street rapper. He was looking for something undeniable. And Eminem, with bleach blonde hair, no filter, and a mind like a Molotov cocktail, fit the bill. They met in early 1998. Their first session, they made My Name Is. It wasn't just a single, it was a detonation. Hi, my name is... What? My name is... Who? Catchy, ridiculous, hilarious, and venomous. A shot across the face of the music industry. MTV had never seen anything like him. A white kid rapping about killing his stepdad, mocking the president, and laughing while doing it. He wasn't trying to be anyone's role model. He was here to unleash. In 1999, the Slim Shady LP dropped under Aftermath Entertainment, backed by Interscope Records. It was Eminem's first major label release. He was still broke when the album came out, still living in Detroit, still getting evicted, but that would change fast. The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200. It went platinum in a month. By the end of the year, it had sold over 4 million copies in the US alone. And Eminem? He wasn't just a rapper anymore. He was a movement. But with success came controversy. Instantly. Politicians hated him, parents feared him, advocacy groups protested him, the media painted him as dangerous. Why? Because he was dangerous to the status quo, dangerous to the sanitized version of pop culture, dangerous to the comfort zones of everyone who didn't grow up like he did. Eminem was talking about what most rappers wouldn't touch: mental health, self-harm, drug addiction, domestic dysfunction, and how humor could be a weapon. In Hymen de Maimon's Tobium 97 Bonnie and Clyde, he imagines murdering his ex and dumping her body with his daughter in the car. Critics called it disgusting. He called it therapy. I was just writing what I felt. I didn't have a filter because nobody gave me one. And that's what made it powerful. Because the anger wasn't just for show. It was real. Growing up, Marshall had been beaten, mocked, silenced, ignored. Now he had the mic, and he wasn't giving it back. If the Slim Shady LP shocked the world, then its aftermath shook it. Because the more fame Eminem gained, the more trouble followed. And the world watched, not with understanding but with doda, but with judgment. To them he was chaos, a walking controversy, an unpredictable foul-mouthed tornado from Detroit. To him, he was finally heard. After years of silence and humiliation, the volume was finally turned up, and he wasn't about to turn it down. But behind the outrageous lyrics and TV headlines, there was something people kept missing. Slim Shady wasn't a mask, he was a mirror, a distorted reflection of the America no one wanted to talk about. The poverty, the addiction, the depression, the single mothers, the kids who grew up feeling invisible. Slim took all of that and exaggerated it until no one could pretend it wasn't real. That was the magic, that was the horror, that was the breakthrough. Still, controversy hit quickly. Politicians condemned him, parents protested him, news anchors attacked him nightly. He's corrupting kids. He's promoting violence. He's dragging rap backwards. But what they didn't understand was simple. Eminem wasn't glorifying darkness. He was surviving it by writing it, by laughing at it, by turning it into punchlines and metaphors and shock therapy. Slim Shady was a pressure valve, releasing years of built-up pain before it destroyed him. As his fame exploded, Eminem's personal life imploded. He was juggling a newborn rap career, a volatile relationship with Kim, a young daughter he adored, no privacy, endless tours, growing lawsuits, media scrutiny, his own temper, and the trauma he carried since childhood. Slim Shady was rising. But Marshall Mathers was drowning. Still, there was one place where everything made sense: the studio. Working with Dr. Dre became a kind of salvation. Dre brought discipline, structure, a standard of excellence Eminem had never experienced. And Eminem brought insanity. Together they created something nobody else in rap could replicate. A mix of horror, humor, anger, and lyrical precision so sharp. It cut into culture like a knife. Their chemistry was unstoppable. Every session produced something wild, something risky, something unforgettable. This partnership wasn't luck, it was destiny. Dre had found the most dangerous pen in hip-hop. And Eminem had found the mentor who saw genius beneath the chaos. But the world wasn't ready for what came next. Guilty conscience, role model, brain damage. Every track pushed boundaries, every punchline tested limits, every verse felt like someone dared him to go darker, and he always delivered. It wasn't just skill, it was fearlessness, something the industry hadn't seen in decades, because Eminem refused to be polite, refused to be digestible, refused to be anything except brutally, painfully, hilariously honest. That honesty? It terrified people. But it also hypnotized them. Fans saw themselves in him, not the cartoon violence, but the emotion beneath it, the fear of failure, the anger from rejection, the resentment of growing up poor, the exhaustion from fighting battles nobody else sees. Under the bleach blonde hair and chaotic verses, he was still that kid from Detroit trying not to disappear. Slim Shady may have been outrageous, but Marshall was real. And that combination? It drew millions. Then came the awards. In 2000, the Slim Shady LP won Best Rap Album at the Grammys. Eminem, a white rapper from Detroit, had just beaten the industry's elite. He stood on that stage, half disbelieving, half defiant, knowing the world didn't want him there. But he belonged. He had fought for it, bleed for it. been beaten, humiliated, and dismissed for it, and now he was undeniable. Slim Shady wasn't just a persona anymore. He was a phenomenon, a rebellion, a cultural reset, and he was only getting started. Because while the Slim Shady LP put Eminem on the map, his next album would shake the world. It would become the fastest selling rap album in history. It would make him a global superstar. It would spark political outrage. It would define a generation. It would cement him as one of the greatest lyricists of all time. It would be called the Marshall Mathers LP. The anger was still there, the humor was still twisted, but now there was focus, precision, purpose. Slim Shady had opened the door. Marshall Mathers was about to walk through it and change music forever. Segment 4. The Marshall Mathers LP, Fame, Fury, and Becoming a Legend. When the world first met Slim Shady, it wasn't ready. When the Slim Shady LP dropped, Eminem was a shockwave. But what came next was the earthquake. The Marshall Mathers LP wasn't just an album. It was a warning shot, a cultural meltdown. And the moment Marshall Mathers stopped being that white rapper from Detroit and became a legend, he wasn't asking to be taken seriously anymore. He was demanding it, and the world couldn't look away even when it wanted to, because this wasn't just music, it was fury turned into art. May 23rd, 2000. The day the Marshall Mathers LP was released, hip hop changed. No album had ever sounded like this: dark, violent, self aware, vulnerable, unapologetic. It wasn't just Slim Shady talking anymore, it was Marshall, bleeding, raging, fighting ghosts, lawsuits, headlines, and himself. From the very first track, he made it clear. He knew exactly what they were saying about him. He wasn't running from it, he was running toward it. Full speed, middle fingers raised. I am whatever you say I am. If I wasn't, then why would I say I am? That line from The Way I Am became an anthem for the misunderstood, the misjudged, and the misquoted. This album wasn't about fame. It was about what fame does to a person and how easily the world builds you up just to watch you burn. Eminem had become one of the most controversial artists on the planet. And instead of cleaning up his act, he amplified it. He attacked everyone: the media, politicians, parents, critics, his own fans. Even himself on Kill You, he rapped about inner violence. On Stan, he told the story of a fan's obsession turned deadly. On Kim, he acted out one of the most disturbing songs ever recorded: screaming, crying, falling apart. This wasn't entertainment, this was emotional warfare, and it worked. In just 1 week, the Marshall Mathers LP sold 1.76 million copies in the US. It became the fastest selling solo album in history at the time. It debuted at number 1, stayed on the charts for over a year, went 11x platinum, and suddenly the entire world knew his name, even if they couldn't say it without flinching. But with success came fire. LGBTQ plus groups called him dangerous. Parents blamed him for violence. Censorship boards tried to silence him. Eminem wasn't just trending, he was targeted. They said he was homophobic, misogynistic, corrupting the youth. He didn't flinch, because the pain he rapped about wasn't theory. It was autobiography. His mother filed a $10 million lawsuit over lyrics. His ex Kim attempted suicide after one of his performances. He was arrested for assault, sued for defamation, banned from radio stations. But still, he sold out arenas. Why? Because the music was undeniable. Because millions of people saw themselves in the brokenness. Because when he screamed about pain, they screamed too. And then came the Grammys. Despite the backlash, The Marshall Mathers LP was nominated for Album of the Year. He won Best Rap Album again. But when he took the stage with Elton John to perform Stan, a direct answer to critics calling him homophobic, he flipped the narrative. Two men from two worlds sharing one piano. The media didn't know what to do with that. And Eminem? He didn't care. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was proving that art is complicated, that people are complicated, and that no one was going to write his story but him. But behind the scenes, the cracks were showing. Eminem was spiraling. Fame had become a prison. Addiction was creeping in. His relationship with Kim was collapsing. He was in and out of court, losing trust in everyone around him. He couldn't walk down the street without being followed, couldn't protect Haley from the chaos, couldn't breathe without headlines dissecting him. Marshall Mathers, the human being, was suffocating under Eminem, the icon. And Slim Shady, he was getting darker. Still, he kept recording. In the years that followed, Eminem would go on to release the Eminem Show, Encore, and beyond. But the Marshall Mathers LP was the crucible. It was the album that made him immortal. It proved he wasn't a fluke, wasn't a gimmick, wasn't just Dr. Dre's experiment. He was an artist, a lyricist, a visionary, a man who turned every insult, every wound, every tabloid lie into a weapon of rhyme. Critics would argue about morality, parents would scream about responsibility, but what they missed was this. The Marshall Mathers LP was never meant to comfort you. It was meant to confront you with your fears, with your hypocrisy, with your judgment. Eminem wasn't a product of the industry. He was a product of America, the parts we don't talk about, the trauma we hide, the pain we joke about. And when he rapped about it, people listened because they saw truth in the chaos. By the end of 2001, Eminem was everywhere. Music videos, movie trailers, news coverage, censorship debates, legal battles. He was no longer just a rapper. He was a mirror, showing the world what it looked like when you handed a mic to someone who had nothing left to lose. And what you got back wasn't just noise, it was legacy. Because the Marshall Mathers LP didn't just break records, it broke rules. And that's how legends are made. Not by playing it safe, not by doing what's expected, but by doing what no one else dares to do. Eminem dared, and the world has never been the same. Segment 5. The Eminem Show. Superstardom and the personal cost. By the year 2002, Eminem wasn't just famous. He was everywhere. Every speaker, every television, every magazine cover. He wasn't a rapper anymore. He was a phenomenon. But the higher you rise, the harder it is to breathe. And with every spotlight pointed at him, the shadows inside were growing deeper. This was the era of The Eminem Show. An album that would break records, win awards, and become one of the most defining pieces of music in modern history. But behind the bars was a man unraveling, because sometimes success doesn't save you, sometimes it costs you everything. 2001, 2002, the pressure cooker. After the nuclear success of the Marshall Mathers LP, the expectations were suffocating. Eminem had gone from trailer parks to luxury hotels, from being broke to being a multimillionaire, from underground battles to global domination. But none of it made life easier. His name was in headlines every single day. Is Eminem destroying the youth? Eminem arrested again. Kim files suit against the rapper. He says he hates his mother, now his wife too. It wasn't just his music they criticized, it was his existence. And the one thing Eminem had always relied on, his privacy, was gone. So what did he do? He went to the only place that still made sense: the studio. The Eminem Show was born out of chaos. It was more mature, more political, more personal. Yes, Slim Shady was still there, but so was Marshall. Now older, angrier, and exhausted. He was no longer writing just for therapy. He was writing for survival. These ideas are nightmares to white parents. The kids listen to me like I'm a therapist. The album wasn't just self expression, it was self defense. Without me cleaning out my closet, sing for the moment, till I collapse. Superman, Haley's song. Each track was a journal entry. One moment he was mocking the media, the next he was screaming at ghosts, his mother, his wife, his demons. He told the world what it was like to grow up without a dad, to raise a daughter in the firestorm of fame, to hate yourself even when millions love you. No rapper had ever been this big and this broken. And then came the movies. 8 Mile hit theaters in November 2002. It wasn't just a film, it was his story, fictionalized, but deeply real. Detroit, battle rap, working class rage, the underdog. He wasn't acting, he was remembering, and people felt it. The film was a massive success. Critics praised it, fans loved it, hip hop embraced it. And then came Lose Yourself, the lead single. A beat that sounded like war, lyrics that felt like gospel. You only get one shot, do not miss your chance to blow. It became a cultural anthem. A song played before games, exams, job interviews, every moment that required courage. It earned Eminem an Oscar. Yes, a rapper won an Academy Award. History. Again. But for Marshall, it was hard to celebrate. He was tired. Fame had twisted every part of his life. His relationship with Kim was in ruins. They had divorced, reconciled, fought, and exploded all over again. He was trying to protect Haley, shield her from the cameras, from the interviews, from the lyrics she was too young to understand. And himself? He was starting to rely on sleeping pills, then painkillers, then more. Success hadn't saved him. It had broken him in a different way. The pressure to stay on top, the lawsuits, the guilt over family, the addiction creeping in, the constant surveillance. He said it plainly. Be careful what you wish for, 'cause you just might get it, then it might kill you. But the numbers were undeniable. The Eminem Show sold over 1.3 million copies in its first week. It would go on to sell more than 27 million copies worldwide, making it one of the best-selling albums of all time. But he didn't care about plaques anymore. He cared about peace, and he couldn't find it. In interviews, he looked tired, guarded. He was paranoid, feuding with everyone from Ja Rule to Benzino to Moby to the government. His name had become a symbol for rebellion and for recklessness. And the more they attacked him, the more venom he spat back. But inside, he was hurting, because even with all the money, power, fame, and fans, he still felt like that kid getting beat up in the bathroom stall, like the nobody from 8 Mile, like the kid who had no dad, a broken home, and a spiral of self-hate that no applause could fix. And then came the pills. At first it was to sleep, then to function, then to numb everything: Vicodin, Valium, Ambien, Methadone. He was becoming dependent, and he knew it. He started forgetting lyrics on stage, slurring his words, missing shows. The man who never took a shortcut was starting to slip, and no one around him could stop it. Because Eminem wasn't just a man anymore. He was a machine, a brand, a business, an empire. And when empires bleed, They bleed quietly. By 2004, Eminem was slowing down. He released Oncorks, his next album. It had hits like Mockingbird and Just Lose It, but something was different. He sounded tired, less sharp, less hungry. Behind the humor was a man losing control. And that year, things hit rock bottom. He nearly died of an overdose. His weight ballooned, he disappeared from the spotlight. No more tours, no more cameras, just silence. For the first time in over 5 years, Marshall Mathers was gone. But the Eminem show, it remains the most vulnerable snapshot of a man standing on top of the world and cracking under the weight. It was rage and reflection, bravado and breakdown. It was Eminem, unfiltered, in a moment when he could have played it safe. He went deeper, told the truth, bared his scars, and showed the world that even legends have limits. Because behind the fame, behind the sold out shows, behind the platinum records and the screaming fans, was a man still haunted by the past, still unsure of the future. And that's what made the Eminem show unforgettable. It wasn't a performance, it was a confession. Segment 6. Curtain Call. Addiction, Disappearance, and the Fight to Come Back. By 2005, Eminem had reached the peak. He was the biggest rapper on the planet. He had Grammys, an Oscar, multi-platinum albums, a biopic that ruled Hollywood, his own label, a legacy already etched in stone. And yet, he wanted to disappear, because behind every award, every punchline, every headline, he was slipping further and further into the one fight he couldn't outrap, outrun, or outright. Addiction. Detroit, 2005. Marshall Mathers was no longer living. He was surviving. He was taking pills just to feel normal. Then more pills to feel nothing. He was addicted to Vicodin, Valium, Ambien, Methadone, whatever would silence the noise. His tolerance grew. So did the doses. Performances became sloppier, studio time became foggier, relationships strained beyond repair. People noticed, fans noticed, but no one could get through because even Marshall didn't fully understand what was happening. He thought he had it under control until he almost died. In late 2005, Eminem overdosed. He had taken a cocktail of sleeping pills, painkillers, and anxiety meds. His organs began to shut down. He collapsed, barely breathing, rushed to the hospital. Doctors said he was 2 hours away from death. 2 hours. That's all that separated Marshall Mathers from a headline that would have ended the story. But he survived, woke up groggy, confused, broken, and even then, he didn't stop. Because addiction isn't a choice, it's a chain, and he was shackled. So he went quiet. Curtain Call. The Hits was released in December 2005, a greatest hits compilation, a farewell almost. Tracks like When I'm Gone and Shake, that carried a strange energy, like a man already stepping off stage. He cancelled tours, stopped doing interviews, faded from the public eye. Fans wondered, where's Eminem? Is he done? Is he okay? But no answers came, because behind closed doors, Eminem was falling apart. 2006-2007. Isolation. He stayed in his Detroit home for weeks at a time, curtains drawn, barely moving, barely eating. He gained weight, at one point over 230 pounds. He was unrecognizable, physically, mentally, spiritually. Proof. His best friend tried to intervene, encourage him to get help, tried to pull him out. But in 2006, Proof was shot and killed outside a Detroit nightclub. Eminem was shattered. That wasn't just his friend, that was his brother, his anchor, his link to his roots. And now he was gone. Marshall spiraled. I didn't care if I lived anymore. He hit rock bottom. The music stopped. No albums, no shows, no appearances. For the first time since 1999, Eminem vanished. The man who once dominated headline was now silent. The voice of the broken had gone mute. But inside, something was changing. Because rock bottom isn't just an ending, it's a place you decide to stay or climb out of. 2008, Rehab. After another near fatal overdose, Eminem admitted he needed help. He checked into rehab, started detoxing, began therapy, started facing every demon he'd spent his life outrunning. It was brutal, the withdrawals, the nightmares, the guilt. He had to relearn how to live without the fog, to feel again, to be a father again, to write again, slowly, painfully. He began rebuilding. He started working out, writing rhymes again, mostly just to vent. But something strange happened. The words came back, sharper, clearer, more honest than ever. He wasn't chasing radio hits. He wasn't trying to shock anyone. He was writing to stay alive. And in those pages, he found something he hadn't felt in years: control. In 2009, the comeback began. Relapse, his first studio album in 5 years, was dark, drug-fueled, and technically flawless. It wasn't his most loved project, but it was a victory because it existed, because he existed. He was back, clean, focused, and hungry. But relapse wasn't the real return. That would come a year later. In 2010, Eminem released Recovery, an album that stripped away the slim, shady mask and showed the man beneath. No accents, no cartoon voices, just Marshall. And fans felt it, not afraid. Love the way you lie, going through changes, space-bound. It was emotional, heavy, beautiful. For the first time, Eminem wasn't mocking the pain. He was admitting it, and the world listened. Recovery debuted at number 1. It went multi-platinum. It was nominated for Album of the Year at the Grammys. He performed at award shows again, smiled more, talked more. The weight had lifted. He had walked through hell, and lived to rap about it. That wasn't just impressive. That was legendary. But he never forgot the price. The years he lost, the friends he buried, the music he couldn't make, the daughter he almost didn't get to watch grow up. Addiction had taken a piece of him, but it hadn't taken everything. And that was his victory. Curtain call had once felt like the end, but in truth was intermission. Because when the curtains reopened, Eminem didn't just return, he reinvented, not as a clown, not as a villain, not as a shock rapper, but as a survivor, a father, a lyricist, a man who knew what it meant to fall and climb again. And that version of Eminem was maybe the most powerful one yet. Curtain Call, The Breaking Point. By 2005, Eminem had done it all. 3 back-to-back best-selling albums, an Oscar, billions of fans, global domination. But what no one saw, what the lights and cameras always missed, was the collapse happening behind the curtain. Because fame had a cost, and Marshall Mathers was paying for it in silence. Detroit, behind closed doors. The Eminem who once electrified stadiums was fading. Not publicly, not yet, but internally he was unraveling. What started as a few pills for sleep and stress became a full-blown dependence on painkillers and sedatives, Vicodin, Valium, Ambien, Methadone, pills in the morning, pills to function, pills to forget, pills to sleep. He wasn't chasing a high, he was trying to disappear. The fans still saw him as untouchable, unstoppable. But Marshall couldn't even recognize his reflection. He'd gained weight, lost motivation, lost control. He was missing shows, forgetting lyrics, sinking deeper into depression. He was no longer rapping to survive. He was barely surviving to live. In December 2005, Curtain Call The Hits was released, a compilation album, a celebration, and a quiet goodbye. Tracks like When I'm Gone and Mockingbird hinted at a man preparing to step back, maybe forever. He wasn't taunting anymore. He was warning us. And When I'm Gone, Just Carry On, Don't Mourn. Fans loved it, critics praised it, but behind the scenes, Marshall Mathers was vanishing. Then came the overdose. Late one night, alone and fogged out, he swallowed a near lethal dose of methadone, believing it was a safe substitute for his usual pills. It wasn't. His organs started shutting down. His blood pressure crashed. His breathing slowed. He collapsed. By the time he reached the hospital, doctors said he was 2 hours away from death. 2 hours. That's all that separated him from the end of the story. But fate wasn't finished with him. He woke up in a hospital bed, groggy, ashamed, alive, somehow, but not healed. Because addiction doesn't vanish overnight, and grief doesn't either. Just a few months later, Marshall suffered another blow. His best friend, Proof, was killed in a nightclub shooting. The man who stood by him since the underground days. The brother who believed in him before the world did. Gone. When Proof died, I died with him. Marshall isolated himself completely. He wasn't just in mourning, he was in exile. 2006-2007, The Disappearance. For nearly 2 years, Eminem disappeared from the spotlight. No tours, no albums, no interviews, just silence and pills. He rarely left his Detroit home, curtains drawn, blinds closed, world muted. He ballooned in weight, at one point over 230 pounds. He stopped writing, stopped performing, stopped believing. To the outside world, Eminem had just vanished. Some fans thought he'd retired. Others thought he was dead. In truth, he was dying slowly. Not on stage, not in headlines, but in private, alone. Segment 7. Legacy Reloaded, Revival, Kamikaze, and a Rap God Reflects. In the early 2000s, Eminem was a force of nature. By the end of the decade, he was a ghost. And in 2010, he came back like a survivor. But even survivors have something left to prove. And for Eminem, legacy wasn't about past glory, it was about present dominance. So when the world questioned whether the rap god still had it, he didn't just answer, he roared. This was the era of revival, kamikaze, and music to be murdered by, a time when Marshall Mathers didn't just return to the mic and he sharpened it, challenged everything, and reflected on what it all meant. This wasn't a comeback. This was a reload. 2017. Revival. After the emotionally raw recovery and the underappreciated relapse, Eminem disappeared again, only to return in 2017 with a project no one saw coming, Revival. The world had changed. Trump was president. Social media was dominating everything. Hip-hop had evolved into mumble rap, trap beats, viral challenges. And now here came Eminem. Older, sober, political, and furious, Revival was different. It was packed with social commentary about racism, gun violence, corruption, America's fractured state. He took direct shots at Trump, becoming one of the first major rappers to openly and directly criticize the administration in songs like Home and the Storm, Freestyle on Bet. And while the message was loud and clear, the reception wasn't. Critics weren't kind. They said Revival sounded bloated, overproduced, out of touch. Some fans missed the punchlines, others missed the darkness. Many just didn't get it, but what they didn't know was that Eminem was listening, watching every tweet, reading every headline, every "he fell off" comment, and in that silence, he was sharpening the knife. 2018. Kamikaze. No announcement, no promo, no warning. Eminem dropped Kamikaze out of nowhere, and it hit like a bomb. From the first track, it was clear. He was done being polite. He torched everyone. Critics who mocked revival, mumble rappers riding auto-tuned waves, media figures who doubted his pen, even younger artists like MGK who took shots at him. This was the slim, shady fury of old. Reignited, focused, unapologetic. He wasn't trying to prove he could evolve with the times. He was daring the times to keep up with him. Revival didn't go viral. Kamikaze was the shot in the dark that hit the target. It was lyrical warfare, flow acrobatics, a man in his mid-40s out-rapping artists half his age and making it look effortless. Fans responded, streaming numbers exploded. The culture was shook. Eminem had just reminded everyone he was still elite, still dangerous, still one of one. 2019-2020, music to be murdered by. And just when people thought the storm had passed, Eminem returned once more. With music to be murdered by, inspired by Alfred Hitchcock's classic thriller aesthetic. It was dark, calculated, mature. It blended storytelling, technical brilliance, and social commentary, addressing mass shootings, mental health, and addiction. The track Darkness, a chilling narrative told from the point of view of a mass shooter, shocked listeners with its depth and commentary. I don't want to be alone in the darkness. No, it wasn't just another rap record, it was art. The deluxe version, side B, proved he wasn't just reflecting, he was still competing, dropping dense punchline-heavy verses that left younger rappers scrambling. But something had changed. The anger was still there, the skill sharper than ever. But the perspective? Different. He wasn't just burning bridges anymore. He was building legacy. Marshall Mathers, now in his late 40s, was still battling, not just for relevance, but for truth. He had survived addiction, loss, criticism, cancellations, time, and he was still here. Not because of trends, but because of craft, rap god mode. Activated. When people talk about great rappers, the conversation always includes his name, because no one writes like Eminem. Internal rhyme, multisyllabic cadence, double and triple entendres, speed, emotion, delivery. He's not just a rapper, he's a technician. And in tracks like Godzilla, where he raps 224 words in 31 seconds, he proved that not only was he still fast, he was still flawless. The world had changed. But Eminem, he adapted without compromise. Reflection. The man behind the mic now. Eminem rarely does interviews, rarely courts attention. He spends time in Detroit with his daughter, away from the spotlight. And that's the paradox. The most talked about rapper in the world has become the most private. Because for him, it was never about attention. It was about expression. And he's still doing that. Better than most. Whether through surprise drops, tight verses, or just silence. Eminem speaks loudest when no one expects him to. Legacy? It's already carved in stone. 15 Grammy wins. Fun Oscar, over 220 million records sold, billions of streams, a style no one can imitate. But more than numbers, Eminem gave a voice to the voiceless. The broken, the bullied, the angry, the outcast, the hurting. He showed them you could be flawed and still be a force. That your past didn't define your future. That pain could be repurposed into power. That being different is your greatest weapon. And as he said himself, I'm not the new kid anymore, but I'm still the problem. Because Eminem isn't a moment, he's a movement. And whether you love him, hate him, fear him, or study him, you'll never forget him. Because in the end, he didn't just change rap, He changed what rap could be. Thank you for watching this chapter in the Rise of Eminem. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you see the man behind the mic in a new way, like this video, leave a comment with your favorite M track, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories from real legends told the way they deserve to be told. Because this isn't the end of the story, it's just the next verse.